Welcome to episode 4 of Talking Shop. Today we're going to be talking about Starlink and how to add it and what you need to know to make it work properly. We've been getting quite a bit of requests for Starlink lately, and we find that people are using them for extended trips, especially out here in Colorado. So we find that people want this to be able to stay connected to loved ones and family or send a couple of emails. And if that's important to you, then you'll want to see how to best integrate a Starlink into your vehicle and your lifestyle. Whether you use the Starlink Gen 3 panel, which is a slightly larger panel, or you use the Starlink Mini panel, they're going to both require a mount, and they're going to require something either permanent or semi-permanent, but secure to mount to the roof or an existing rack. We really like the Star Mounts system, either the Voyager or the Explorer mount. They seem to work the best for us, and they integrate into the roof racks or the crossbar systems that we're using as our foundation. Once we have a panel, a suitable location, and a mount picked out, the real crux of the project begins. And that's getting the power, which also carries the signal for the Starlink panel, back into the vehicle cleanly. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. So in this case, you might want to use a cable gland or some sort of bulkhead seal. These are really common in the marine industry, and that will bring your wire or cabling back into the vehicle. That's the cleanest, but also the most difficult and time-consuming way to do it. You might keep the panel outside and only plug it in when you're using it. Not recommended long-term, but could work in a pinch, for example. So the real crux here is, how do we get that power and signal back out of the vehicle and to the panel? Now you've got your signal and power wire coming back into the vehicle. What power source are we going to use for the Starlink itself? Just because you've got power running back into the vehicle that's a USB-C like your iPhone charger doesn't mean that that power port in your vehicle can power the Starlink appropriately. So the Starlink, when using DC power, requires a higher voltage than the standard 12 volts coming out of your phone charger on the dashboard. So what we need to do is make sure that we have an adequate power source that can handle the wattage of the Starlink Mini power. And oftentimes these onboard ports can't handle that. Secondly, when you're running one of these ports, your vehicle will need to be on. Even if it does have enough power, as soon as you turn the ignition or you turn the vehicle off, you will interrupt your Starlink connection. You would drop a phone call or you would lose your streaming service at that time. So here's the solution. Add some auxiliary power or add a switched power. Now in this Grenadier, there's actively switched power in the headliner. Some of the Ford trucks, Chevy trucks, GMC have auxiliary powers that you can use when there's constant power on the vehicle or just accessory power. So in this case, we want constant power, but we want to be able to control it so that the Starlink doesn't drain our battery and we don't want to lose that connectivity. I'm going to show you how we do it. So what do we do if our vehicle doesn't have an appropriate power source for us to run our Starlink Mini or Gen 3 panel with a 12-volt power source? Add an auxiliary power source. Something like this small unit from Bluetti. This is the Elite 30 V2. This is a 288 watt-hour battery bank. It's a really small battery bank, but it'll last for 7 to 8 hours running a Starlink before it needs to be recharged. So you can have DC input and DC output here just through these 100 watt or 140 watt USB-Cs and just keep this DC running. Once we exhaust this power, how are we going to recharge it? And what we would do in one of our installs is semi-install this in the back of the vehicle and run a charging profile from the alternator, a DC to DC charging profile, which we talked about in episode 2 of Talking Shop. So we would have a DC to DC charger, also made by this brand, Bluetti, that will keep this thing topped off while we're driving. And then, of course, Let's say you are camped and you want to keep this topped off, but you don't want to run your vehicle. You can always put an input here for a solar panel, and you could do that even simultaneously if you wanted to add a solar panel. One of these little guys here will keep your vehicle's power system completely independent of this auxiliary power source. This will run a Starlink. A unit like this will run a refrigerator in your vehicle. These are super effective for portable power, especially for Starlink. If this project or this type of project is outside what you're capable of doing on your own, definitely seek a professional to help you with this properly. And if you're in the Aspen area or in the Colorado mountain area and you need some help with a Starlink panel, give us a call at White River Overland. Make sure you leave your comments below and give us some love, like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.